Hey class, welcome to the South Carolina Journey, and we are looking at chapter 1 in our book. It's called Two Worlds Meet, and the I can statements that this is about are I can identify major, I can identify characteristics of the Cherokee, Catawba, and the Yamasee tribes. Learning target number 5. I can compare the characteristics of the Cherokee, Catawba, and Yamasee tribes. Learning target number 6. And we are looking at this essential question. Here it is. How did Native Americans, Europeans, and Africans contribute to the settlement and growth of South Carolina during its earliest days? And specifically here, we are talking about Native Americans first. Okay, so look at this word here. We're talking about Native Americans. So the first people, prehistoric people. So around 40,000 years ago, Native Americans crossed the Bering Strait land bridge from Asia into Canada. And then around 15,000 years ago, they arrived in South Carolina. Because there was no written language, this time period is known as the prehistoric era. The people who lived during this time went through 5 periods of development. And these are pre-projectile point, which was 15,000 years ago, the Paleo period, 12,000 years ago, the Archaic period, 10,000 years ago, the Woodland period, 3,000 years ago, and the Mississippian period, 1,000 years ago. And a way that we can memorize this is PAWM, Palm, Paleo, Archaic, Woodland, and Mississippian. Palm, Paleo, Archaic, Woodland, and Mississippian. During the pre-projectile Paleo period, although not covered by giant glaciers like other parts of North America, the weather in South Carolina was rather cold during this period. And the Piedmont and coastal zones were home to megafauna, large animals such as mammoths, mastodons, and bison. And nomadic tribes such as the Paleo people hunted these animals and followed them. In the pre-projectile Paleo period continued, technology was limited. The people used crude stone tools such as scrapers, choppers, and large stone spear points. And the Paleo people started gathering plants to supplement their diets. So let's look at these pictures. Comparison of a mammoth on the left and a mastodon on the right. Students often find this to be pretty interesting because the mastodon has less hair and the mammoth is woolly. Remember the woolly mammoth? And when I think about this, I'm thinking about the Ice Age movie. Students are also amazed when they see this ATL at Laddle. He is trying to hunt and kill the woolly mammoths. In the Archaic period, as the South Carolina weather warmed 10,000 years ago, natives entered the Archaic period. Natives followed a less nomadic lifestyle, settling along the coast and rivers during the spring and summer months. New ways to hunt and fish were developed, gathering of nuts and berries. The atlatl, or as I like to call it, the ATL since we're close to Atlanta, helped propel their spears farther and faster. As the period ended, natives began to trade, farm, and strengthen clay with plant fibers. Then in the woodland period, during this period the natives lived in villages with a number of earthen mounds. Food options expanded, natives grew gourd, squash, and corn. They began making pottery with clay and sand. They decorated it and used it to store food. They developed bow and arrows to hunt. And trade grew among the various cultures, with trade routes spreading along the Ohio River to the north and the Gulf of Mexico to the south. In the Mississippian period, Mississippian peoples settled along the rivers near the fall line and lived in large villages. Homes were built in a style called wattle and daub. We'll see pictures of this in a second. Palisades, wooden fences with sharpened ends provided protection for their settlements. Squash, beans, corn, and pumpkins were the main crops. Powerful leaders controlled trade. And the kingdom of Kafitikuchi located near present-day Camden, is an example of their culture in South Carolina. I heard you laughing at me trying to say that word. I'm not really exactly sure how that's pronounced, but it was located near Camden. The people of the eastern woodlands, first natives that European explorers encountered. More is known about the culture due to written accounts by Europeans. So, in the eastern woodland culture, they dug out tree trunks for canoes and used rivers for transportation. Survival depended on hunting, gathering, farming, and fishing. Sharp points carved from rocks, animal bones, and bows and arrows were used to hunt. And southeastern tribes featured matrilineal clans, meaning family ties were based on the mother's lineage. Primary crops were corn, beans, and squash, known as the Three Sisters. This always comes up in questions. Corns, beans, and squash. What are the Three Sisters? Pumpkins and bottle gourds. Both genders were involved in the tribal government. Men and women had specific roles. Men raise boys, hunt, conduct war. Women farming and gathering.